Psychohistory. Gal Dornick, using non-mathematical concepts, has defined psychohistory to be that branch of mathematics which deals with the reactions of human conglomerates to fixed social and economic stimuli. Implicit in all these definitions is the assumption that human conglomerate being dealt with is sufficiently large for valid statistical treatment. The necessary size of such a conglomerate may be determined by Selden's first theorem, which, a further necessary assumption is that the human conglomerate be itself unaware of psychohistoric analysis in order that its reactions be truly random. The basis of all valid psychohistory lies in the development of the Selden functions, which exhibits properties congruent to those of such social and economic forces as... Chapter 4. Good afternoon, sir, said Gall. You didn't think we were to meet before tomorrow? Ordinarily, we would not have. It's just that if we are to use your services, we must work quickly. It grows continually more difficult to obtain recruits. I don't understand, sir. You were talking to a man on the observation tower, were you not? Yes, his first name is Gerald. I know no more about him. His name is nothing. He's an agent of the Commission of Public Safety. He followed you from the spaceport. But why? I'm afraid I'm very confused. Did the man on the tower say nothing about me? Gall hesitated. He referred to you as Raven Selden. Did he say why? He said you predict disaster. I do. What does Trantor mean to you? Everyone seemed to be asking his opinion of Trantor. Gall felt incapable of response beyond the bare word, glorious. You say that without thinking. What of psychohistory? I haven't thought of applying it to the problem. Before you are done with me, young man, you will learn to apply psychohistory to all problems as a matter of course. Observe. Selden removed his calculator pad from the pouch at his belt. Men said he kept one beneath his pillow for use in moments of wakefulness. Its gray, glossy finish was slightly worn by use. Selden's nimble fingers, spotted now with age, played along the files and rows of buttons that filled its surface. Red symbols glowed out from the upper tier. He said, That represents the condition of the Empire at present. He waited. Gall said finally, Surely that is not a complete representation. No, not complete, said Selden. I'm glad you do not accept my word blindly. However, this is an approximation which will serve to demonstrate the proposition. Will you accept that? Subject to my later verification of the derivation of the function, yes. Gall was carefully avoiding a possible trap. Good. Add to this the known probability of imperial assassination, viceregal revolt, the contemporary recurrence of periods of economic depression, the declining rate of planetary explorations, He proceeded. As each item was mentioned, new symbols sprang to life at his touch and melted into the basic function which expanded and changed. Gall stopped him only once. I don't see the validity of that set transformation. Selden repeated it more slowly. Gall said, But that is done by way of a forbidden socio-operation. Good. You are quick, but not yet quick enough. It is not forbidden in this connection. Let me do it by expansions. The procedure was much longer, and at its end, Gall said humbly, Yes, I see now. Finally, Selden stopped. This is Trantor 3 centuries from now. How do you interpret that, eh? He put his head to one side and waited. Gall said unbelievingly, Total destruction. But that is impossible. Trantor has never been... Selden was filled with the intense excitement of a man whose body only had grown old. Come. You saw how the result was arrived at. Put it into words. Forget the symbolism for a moment. Gall said, As Trantor becomes more specialized, it becomes more vulnerable, less able to defend itself. Further, as it becomes more and more the administrative center of the Empire, it becomes a greater prize. As the imperial succession becomes more and more uncertain, and the feuds among the great families more rampant, social responsibility disappears. Enough. And what of the numerical probability of total destruction within 3 centuries? Well, I couldn't tell. Surely you can perform a field differentiation. Gall felt himself under pressure. He was not offered the calculator pad. It was held a foot from his eyes. He calculated furiously, felt his forehead grow slick with sweat. He said, About 85%? Not bad, said Selden, thrusting out a lower lip, but not good. The actual figure is 92.5%. Gall said, And so you are called Raven Selden. I've seen none of this in the journals. But of course not. This is unprintable. Do you suppose the Imperium could expose its shakiness in this manner? That is a very simple demonstration in psychohistory. But some of our results have leaked out among the aristocracy. That's bad. Not necessarily. All is taken into account. But is that why I'm being investigated? Yes. Everything about my project is being investigated. Are you in danger, sir? Oh, yes. There is a probability of 1.7% that I will be executed. But of course, that will not stop the project. We have taken that into account as well. Well, never mind. You will meet me, I suppose, at the university tomorrow? I will, said Gall. Commission of Public Safety. The aristocratic coterie rose to power after the assassination of Cleon I, last of the Antons. In the main, they formed an element of order during the centuries of instability and uncertainty in the Imperium. Usually under the control of the great families of the Chens and the Divarts, it generated eventually into a blind instrument for maintenance of the status quo. They were not completely removed as a power in the state until after the accession of the last strong emperor, Cleon II, the first chief commissioner. In a way, the beginning of the commission's decline can be traced to the trial of Harry Seldon, 2 years before the beginning of the foundational era. That trial is described in Gall Dornick's biography of Harry Seldon. Chapter 5. Gall did not carry out his promise. He was awakened the next morning by a muted buzzer. He answered it, and the voice of the desk clerk, as muted, polite and deprecating as it well might be, informed him that he was under detention at the orders of the Commission of Public Safety. Gall sprang to the door and found it would no longer open. He could only dress and wait. They came for him and took him elsewhere, but it was still detention. They asked him questions most politely. It was all very civilized. He explained that he was a provincial of Synax, that he had attended such and such schools and obtained a Doctor of Mathematics degree on such and such a date. He had applied for a position on Dr. Seldon's staff and had been accepted. Over and over again he gave these details, and over again they returned to the question of his joining the Seldon project. How had he heard of it? What were to be his duties? What secret instructions had he received? What was it all about? He answered that he did not know. He had no secret instructions. He was a scholar and a mathematician. He had no interest in politics. And finally the gentle inquisitor asked, "When will Trantor be destroyed?" Gall faltered. "I could not say of my own knowledge." "Could you say of anyone's?" "How could I speak for another?" He felt warm, over-warm. The inquisitor said, "Has anyone told you of such destruction?" "Set a date?" And as the young man hesitated, he went on, "You've been followed, Doctor. We were at the airport when you arrived, on the observation tower when you waited for your appointment, and, of course, we were able to overhear your conversation with Dr. Seldon." Gall said, "Then you know his views on the matter." "Perhaps, but we would like to hear them from you." "He is of the opinion that Trantor would be destroyed within 3 centuries. "He proved it. Mathematically?" "Yes, he did." "You maintain the mathematics to be valid, I suppose?" "If Dr. Seldon vouches for it, it is valid." "Then we will return." "Wait. I have a right to a lawyer. I demand my rights as an imperial citizen." "You shall have them." And he did. It was a tall man that eventually entered, a man whose face seemed all vertical lines and so thin that one could wonder whether there was room for a smile. Gall looked up. He felt disheveled and wilted. So much had happened, yet he had been on Trantor not more than 30 hours. The man said, "I am Lors of Achem. Dr. Seldon has directed me to represent you." "Is that so? Well, then look here. I demand an instant appeal to the Emperor. I'm being held without cause. I'm innocent of anything. Of anything." He slashed his hands outward, palms down. "You've got to arrange a hearing with the Emperor, instantly." Avacum was carefully emptying the contents of a flat folder onto the floor. If Gall had had the stomach for it, he might have recognized Selamite legal forms, metal thin and tape-like, adapted for insertion within the smallness of a personal capsule. He might also have recognized a pocket recorder. Avacum paid no attention to Gall's outburst, finally looked up. He said, "The Commission will, of course, have a spy beam on our conversation. This is against the law, but they will use one nevertheless." Gall ground his teeth. "However," and Avacum seated himself deliberately, "the recorder I have on the table, which is a perfectly ordinary recorder to all appearances and performs its duties well, has the additional property of completely blanketing the spy beam. This is something they will not find out at once." "Then I can speak." "Of course." "Then I want a hearing with the Emperor." Avacum smiled frostily. It turned out there was room for it on his thin face after all. His cheeks wrinkled to make the room. He said, "You are from the provinces." "I am none the less an imperial citizen. As good a one as you or as any of this Commission of Public Safety. No doubt, no doubt. It is merely that, as a provincial, you do not understand life on Traintor as it is. There are no hearings before the Emperor. To whom else would one appeal from this commission? Is there other procedure? None. There is no recourse in practical sense. Legalistically, you may appeal to the Emperor, but you would get no hearing. The Emperor today is not the Emperor of Enton Dynasty, you know. Traintor, I am afraid, is in the hands of the aristocratic families, members of which compose the Commission of Public Safety. This is a development which is well predicted by psychohistory. Gall said, Indeed? In that case, if Dr. Selden can predict the history of Trantor 300 years into the future, he can predict it 1,500 years into the future. Let it be 15,000. Why couldn't he yesterday have predicted the events of this morning and warned me? No, I'm sorry. Gall sat down and rested his head in one sweating palm. I quite understand that psychohistory is a statistical science and cannot predict the future of a single man with an accuracy. You'll understand that I'm upset. But you are wrong. Dr. Selden was of the opinion that you would be arrested this morning. What? It is unfortunate, but true. The Commission has been more and more hostile to his activities. New members joining the group have been interfered with to an increasing extent. The graphs show that for our purposes, matters might be best brought to a climax now. The Commission of itself was moving somewhat slowly, so Dr. Selden visited you yesterday for the purpose of forcing their hand. No other reason. Gall caught his breath. I resent... Please. It was necessary. You were not picked for any personal reasons. You must realize that Dr. Selden's plans, which are laid out with the developed mathematics of over 18 years, include all eventualities with significant probabilities. This is one of them. I've been sent here for no other purpose than to assure you that you need not fear. It will end well, almost certainly so for the project, and with reasonable probability for you. What are the figures? Demanded Gall. For the project, over 99.9%, and for myself, I am instructed that this probability is 77.2%. Then I've got a better than 1 chance in 5 of being sentenced to prison or to death. The last is under 1%. Indeed, calculations upon one man mean nothing. You send Dr. Selden to me. Unfortunately, I cannot. Dr. Selden is himself arrested. The door was thrown open before the rising Gaul could do more than utter the beginning of a cry. A guard entered, walked to the table, picked up the recorder, looked upon all sides of it, and put it in his pocket. Avecum said quietly, I will need that instrument. We will supply you with one, Counselor. That does not cast a static field. My interview is done in that case. Gaul watched him leave, and was alone.